Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, spirituality, and consciousness. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Dave Zaboski, the co-founder and chief creative officer of Laetro.com, a tech-enabled community of the world's finest creatives serving enterprise customers with best-in-class design services. He's also a classically trained painter and was an animator at Disney, Sony, and Warner Bros. During the second golden age of animation. He worked on Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, Pocahontas, Aladdin, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Fantasia, and so many others. And, we'll get into the show and talk a lot more about his work. We met recently at a beautiful gathering in Arco Santi, and I heard Dave's talk on creativity. And as soon as I left the workshop, I immediately beelined to him and asked him if he could be on the show. So welcome to the show, Dave.
Oh, Yasmin, I'm so excited to be here and really honored. Thank you.
Oh, so Dave, to kick it off, what do you spend most of your time thinking about these days and why?
Well, I think about storytelling. I think about the power that we have to use this really monumental gift that we have, this 1 in 100 million species gift, to be able to affect change, to connect with each other, to offer solutions to the seemingly intractable problems that we face today. So I think a lot about story and the power of story.
Mm. So, Dave, can you tell us a little bit about some of the most memorable experiences, working on these really iconic films like Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King and Aladdin? And so many of these films were just so memorable and had such an impact on my life. And I'm very curious, what was that creative process like for you to be a part of those films? And especially since it feels like they were so new for their time, the idea that one could even create animated films like that. I mean, can you walk us through that experience?
Right. Well, I'll tell you, it was like working in a chocolate factory. If anybody's seen Willy Wonka, I was one of the Oompa Loompas working on these films. Like, it was a collection of the greatest doodlers, the most amazing artists from all over the world, all these sort of iconoclastic wild horses. And because we were telling a great big story, we could all point in the same direction. You could get all of these wild horses pointing in the same direction. And for me, the experience was one of incredible generosity. These amazing artists were all using their prodigious talents to tell one big story, a story bigger than any of the egos involved. And so because of that, there was this generosity. We weren't competing with each other. We were competing with the legacy. We were competing with the people, the amazing artists who came before us. And so that generosity was all about supporting each other to do the best art they possibly could. It was a very exciting time.
Wow, that sounds amazing just to have that experience of that co-inspiration, co-elevation between artists. And I'm curious, like your role specifically was in illustration, correct?
Well, I was what was called an animator, and the animator is the actor with a pencil. And so my skill set was to be part of the storytelling, to understand physics, acting, drawing, cinematography, all of the sort of things that are necessary for a film to really think about the actor with a pencil.
Mm. So, as someone who's done some film, I'm curious. I mean, certainly not animated, but I'm curious when you're building character or even creating their persona, their life. How did you bring them to life? What was, or I guess, what was one of your favorite characters too?
Well, everything starts with research. That was something that was really it's something that I really loved about it. So, for example, John Smith. Now, John Smith is this interesting character. He was a captain in the British Army. He came over as one of the first adventurers to Virginia. What was his life like? Who was he? What was his character? There are amazing stories that he was either a tremendous liar or an incredible adventurer or some place in between. And so
Mm.
our job is to sort of really bring to life. And that's the name animator itself. It's in it. We animate. We bring to life that character through research and conversation and acting and good drawing.
Mm. That's beautiful. Yeah. I'm always like so curious to know how that process looks like, how long it is, the messiness of it, the
Mm.
structure of it, and one, thing that really, there's actually many things that were so memorable from your workshop, but I'd love for you to share some pieces of wisdom that you shared with us at the workshop on creativity and, what are some ways that we can kind of dive into our own inner creativity and innovation.
Right. Well, for us, I think about creativity as a kind of technology that it isn't just something that somebody has like a black box and then it's a mystery, that there's a kind of need for a replicable result. So technology, we think about a technology might be something that you plug into the wall. But really, a technology is a practice or a system that allows for replicable results. And so ritual can be a kind of technology, things that you do to make sure that we started this conversation before we came on air with an intention that we set. That's a sort of technology so that we can hew to a particular track so we get results. And so with creativity, I think it's the same thing, especially as a professional creator. A professional creative, you can't say, oh, it's Tuesday. I don't feel like creating today. If you've got deadlines coming up, you have to have systems and practices that allow for you to make progress on your creative projects, kind of despite how you feel. And in fact, because feeling's a big part of it, you have systems and practices that take into account your feelings so that you can operate at your highest level when you need to.
Mm.
So I think some of those are some of the things that we talked about are there. I talk about 5 universal laws of creativity, 5 things that we undeniably need to address and build practices for in order for us to create as powerfully as possible. Do you mind if I just share those 5 really briefly?
I'd love to hear the 5.
All right. So, and these I call these universal laws of creativity. Are there only these 5? I don't know. There might be more. If you discover some others that you think I might be interested in, I'm wide open to them. These are the 5 that help me, that I use every day when I turn a thought into a thing. And the first one is that you have to believe. Whatever it is that you're creating, you have to believe that it's possible. And belief is an incredibly powerful tool that we humans have. And this is why I think story is so important, because story is one of the great practices to help people believe. The second one is that we iterate. The second universal law is iteration. You can't really make that first line your last line. A powerful piece of thought that wants to become a thing needs to phase up in stages. And so practices for understanding iteration are super valuable to take that idea and make it real. The third thing is collaboration. No big idea that you have can you do by yourself. You need collaborators. Collaborators are people that are there to be additive to the thing that you're up to and that you're additive to them. And so at Disney, we had this amazing term called plussing. To plus something was to be in service to the idea, the trajectory of that idea, not the ego that brought it. And plussing was this cultural piece. It wasn't just a term. Like I could go into a buddy's office at one of the other animators and go, hey, can you plus this? And then we talk about, like, how can that person plus it? Maybe they are amazing at drawing hands. And so I say, hey, can you help me draw this hand? And so we plussed each other. There was this generosity of collaboration that really, I think, was the key to the successful stories and movies that we made. The fourth is risk. The fourth universal law of creativity is that we have to take risks. And those risks are maybe small risks, like using a pen to do a drawing instead of a pencil, so that you're actually making a commitment to something, or the risk that an entire company takes to tell a story that's never been told before. But risk is a necessary part the of the ability to turn a thought into a thing. And the more you can practice risk in small ways, incremental risks, the more you can build trust to be able to take big risks with your teams. And so understanding the power of risk and the cultivation of trust is a universal law of creativity. And the fifth one, the last one, is to complete. That powerful creators complete. They finish what they started. They make what they say they were going to make. And when they do, what happens is that completed project becomes part of the story that they use to help believe. And so it closes the circuit on these universal laws that you believe, you iterate, you collaborate, you risk, and then you complete. And when you complete, you believe even more, and then you're on the next cycle.
Mm, that's really powerful, Dave. I love that. I want to also talk a little bit about the last two, because, you speak about, taking risks and even just, taking even small risks to build that muscle each day. I'm curious, if you notice at least I've anecdotally noticed this, that a lot of people don't take creative risks because they're afraid of failure. And so how do you look at failure?
Yeah, that's a great question. I often wonder, is it that they're afraid of failure, or are they afraid of starting, or are they afraid of finishing? Sometimes I work on something so slowly because I don't want to finish it. It's so delicious to be in it. But
Mm,
what I would say, there are a couple things to answer your question, Yasmin. One is, do you know that feeling that you have when you think you're not exactly ready?
yeah.
That's what ready feels like. And so, you know, it's okay to just start on something. I think it was Robert Louis Stevenson talked about the great affair is to just move, to get
Mm,
something moving. And then I think Goethe also said something about taking action. There is boldness and genius in just taking action. And so failure is only failure if you don't learn anything from it. And so I think that really, for me, is the key. I work in the tech industry where there's a lot of times where they say, oh, well, that's a fail. And I never think about it in those terms. I think that if we've learned something, then there's no such thing as failure. There's just another iteration that gets us closer to that which we believe is possible.
mm. Oh, I love that so much. That's so good. Yeah. And I love these
Mhm.
quotes. I'm actually writing them down. They're so good. There's
Some of them I'm sort of paraphrasing. Goethe, I'm not sure if I'm completely hitting that one, but it's pretty close. There's boldness and genius in action, something like
mm,
that.
I love that so much. I mean, yeah, I think that some also people are maybe more wired to try things and not attach any personal importance to the end result, right? The output. And I feel like that's an important point to talk about as an artist, that you talk about completion, but the output, I think most people's output is kind of varied, right? It's not that everyone always has a smash hit every single time. And I think that's something a lot of
Right.
artists don't talk about. So, I mean, I'm curious
Right.
if you have thoughts about that.
Yeah, look, at the reason you complete is so that you can build confidence to get back into the process again. You know,
Mm,
You don't have to complete everything. I mean, if you had your camera on, you would not only see the disaster that my hair is, but you'd also see behind me all of these paintings. And some of them they're all in various stages of completion. Some may never get complete. what's really critical is the learning, not necessarily from a completion, but it's the learning from process. The process, and it's one of the challenges I see in the proliferation of AI right now, is that we are so sort of focused on a result. And that result has gotten that way because there'd been a process. Now there's really no process. We just go straight to result. And I think that what's intrinsically, beautifully, divinely human is the process of discovery. The connection to the creativity that we have in us is it's our link to our own divinity. And that sense of discovery, that step by step where you go, I had one of my teachers, Craig Nelson, an incredible painter. He says, you make a mark with the full force of your being, believing that it's correct, and then knowing it's probably wrong. And that to me is the dance of creativity. The confidence to say, I make this mark, I make this statement with my life, with my being, with my pen. And I'm okay not being attached to it. What I am attached to is the lessons that I learn from that moment. And so
That's
that to me, that's the thing that when I think about the worry about starting or the fear of failure, it really is, people talk about flow, and flow is something that happens deep in a process. And when you're in flow, you don't know what your name is, you don't know what day it is. That's the magic that you're aiming at. And that only comes from being completely present to the process and trusting that that process will unfold to its natural conclusion. That there is a that is the zen of creation right there, is trusting the process, not chasing the outcome.
I love that. Trust the process, don't chase the outcome. Also, like, you're very quotable, Dave. Like writing all over my notebook.
I guess I am today.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. So, where do you find inspiration, and who inspires you today?
The most pure inspiration is nature. Nature is the great creator. I mean, there's a practice called a sit spot, where you just sit and listen to what's called the la langue des oiseaux, the language of the birds, and just sort of be a part of nature. There's an opportunity to incubate, and then if you're practiced enough, then ideas come and solutions come. There's an oscillation that is sort of hot and cold, like I'm hot, I'm really into this thing, I need to work on it. Then I'm cold, I step away, I get some incubation on it, and then I come back to hot and cold, hot and cold. And that oscillation allows for space for ideas to support their own manifestation, meaning that solutions will arrive. So nature is the first place that I go to. I live near a really nice walking trail, and so I get my dog and we go for a walk, and I get some, I work on my ideas. The second thing is people. Who are the people that inspire you? There are the, you know, the the classical sort of monsters out there, that are living, Deepak Chopra and others, who I think bring so much beauty to the world through their philosophies. And then I also go to the Getty Museum, and I joke that I go to the Getty to visit my friends, and I have long conversations with my friends at the Getty. They're all dead, but they have spoken to me across the eons of time through the works that they've made with every brushstroke. And so I go and I listen to what they have to say. And maybe they offer solutions on how I can capture light, because that's really what we all are up to, is the solving for the light, is kind of how I put it. the light that bounces off a cheek or a peach, or that light that comes from inside of a soul that's connected to their creativity.
That's beautiful. And for those who are not in California, the Getty is a very well-known museum in Los Angeles, and I love that
Right.
you spend time there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm at the Getty once a month, and whatever city I go to, I find what the whatever the big museum is there, and I go and visit and see if I've got some friends over there too. Those are places that are, those are for me really inspiring places, because those are people who have turned a thought into a thing at a level that moves culture.
So tell us a little bit about your journey, Dave. How did you become a person who worked on all these amazing films as an animator, as an illustrator, as a creator? And who are some of your early influences in your life that helped shape your kind of artistic style and approach?
Right. Well, I kind of feel like I've done a universe of drawing in my life. I picked up a crayon when I was 2, and I don't think I ever put it down. I never really thought that I would be a professional artist per se. Like, it wasn't something that I was as a kid saying I'm going to be a fireman when I grow up. I didn't think about being a Disney animator when I grew up. In fact, there really, it wasn't on the radar for most people until, the Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. So even when I started at Disney, my friends who were artists were like, "What are you doing over there? They just make cartoons." And so, uh, I had always drawn. I sort of joked that I come from a big Jewish family in Los Angeles, and when I graduated college, they said, "Hey, you can be anything you want in your life, Dave. What kind of doctor or lawyer is that going to be?" And so I I wasn't completely sold on the doctor lawyer side of things. I worked in a law firm for a year to see what lawyers do, and it was not the direction I wanted to go in. And this is something that I would offer also to folks, like especially those who are looking to recreate their lives, to make a turn. Knowing what you don't want to do is just as valuable as knowing what you do. You can find the thing that you are not interested in and then turn around and see what's in the other direction. It may be challenging, but that's what I did. And I was facing art again.
Mm.
And so I got a D plus in high school art. And and so I know. Everybody was like, "Dave, you draw all the time. You should take an art class. Go take an art class. You're in high school. Go see it. What about doing an art class would do for you?" And the class was at the time the teacher was teaching, and it was probably a class that was not it was required, but not, not viable for most people. And so she had 10 projects, 10 points a project. If you did them, you would get a good grade, and then you didn't have to worry about it again. But I was there to learn. And so she would say, "Hey, draw this sphere in charcoal lit from this side." And I would draw an Indian head in pen and ink, with the same lighting, but a wrinkled face from Edward Sheriff Curtis photograph, and when you put them all up on the board to see, all of the spheres that are lit with charcoal, and then there's this one pen and ink drawing of an ancient Indian, ancient Native American, and it's like one of these things is not like the other, and so yeah, I got a D plus in high school art. Um,
Oh.
the same semester, I was doing drawings on the desk in my social studies class. And my social studies teacher called me up and said, "Hey, Dave, I'm going to give you a B in this class, but you were drawing on the desk every day. Those were your drawings, weren't they?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess they were." And he goes, "Well, I'll tell you what. Every day after class, all of the teachers in this row would come in and see what you drew on the desk. So you made me look good. I'm going to bump you up a grade." And so I got I know, crazy. I got an A in social studies for being so arty, and a D plus in art for being too social. And so I kind of put the whole thing away. Uh, I went to college. I got a couple of degrees in college, but I loved making art. And I did it for friends for their birthdays and for, I don't know, anniversaries and things like that. And then when I decided to not go to law school, I called all my friends and said, "Hey, remember that drawing I did for your birthday? Can I borrow it for a portfolio for this art school?" And they were like, "Oh my God, we've been waiting for this." And so they were like, "We knew you were an artist. We were really disturbed that you were going to law school. We're so excited for you." And so I put together this portfolio. I got into this college called Art Center College of Design. It's one of the best art schools in the world. And Disney came knocking for an internship. And I got an internship there that was kind of like, sort of like a Project Runway sort of internship. They had 15 of us in the internship, and they had 3 positions at the end of it. And once I got to Disney, I realized that these are the best artists in the world. As kooky as they were, oh my God, they were extraordinary. There were better artists in every position there than any of the teachers at my school. And I went to a good school. But it was there that I thought, okay, this is where I'm going to find my mastery. And so I worked super hard, and I got one of those spots. And my first movie was Beauty and the Beast.
Wow. Wow. That's, I
Yeah.
love that story so much because to me, it just shows that when you're in alignment, things come to you. Disney came knocking on your door and you got the opportunity to work on one of the greatest animated films of our time, right? So it makes me so happy that you follow that instinct.
Yeah. And um, you know, uh, I have to say too that it took me 3 times to get into Disney.
Hmm.
And so the first 2 times that Disney came, the first 2 times that Disney did portfolio reviews, I was one of the top 50 portfolios, but I wasn't invited to the internship. The third time I applied, I got the internship, and then I got the job. So I would also say that
Mm.
persistence is also important. Like things, Louis Pasteur said, "Fortune favors the prepared mind." And so things do come to you, but you have to be able to say yes and then step into this space. And so sometimes it's the first time it happens, and that's great. But sometimes it's persistence
Mm.
that matters.
Thank you for sharing that. I think we all needed to hear that one because you're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
and
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just, if I could add, Yasmin, like it was really challenging. I did not know anything about animation when I started. I could draw, and they hired me because I could draw, and I had something that they saw in me that they felt that they could train. And then I got started, and I trained. Like they had a review board. They had the Disney Review Board. It was made of 12 of the top artists at Disney. Eventually, I was actually one of the people on the review board and worked in Paris, the Paris studio, helping recruit artists there. But when I first started, every month they would have a review of anybody who was doing work who wanted to get a promotion. And I think for the first maybe 3 years that I was there, I presented something every single month. Like sometimes people would, they'd build something up for 6 months, and then they would present it. I I put something into the review board every month, and
Wow.
I wanted them to know I'm learning this stuff. I'm committed to this stuff. It was all extracurricular. It was all stuff that I did on my own time, but I was committed. Um, in fact, if I could tell you one little story that I
Please.
think is
Yeah,
kind of
please.
neat. Um, so because I didn't know anything about animation, I would go and study animation. And the best place in the world to study animation is inside of Disney. There was a place there that was called the Animation Research Library. It's the place where all of the artists went to research both past projects and anything else that they had in mind. There was a library there, but the library also contained scenes from every film that we had ever done. So you could go and check out the drawings from Fantasia from the 50s. You could check out drawings even earlier. You had to go through 3 security guards to get to the room where you could check these things out. Like it was super high security. And then you had to make an appointment. So I made an appointment every week to go in and study animation. And every week I would see either Larry or Doug, who would stand behind a sort of um, kind of almost like a fast food restaurant window, and behind them were all of these treasures, but you couldn't get to all of the treasures. You had to have them go pull it for you, and then they would hand you a scene. So you would look at a book that would have, say, all of the scenes from, Jungle Book or Sleeping Beauty, and then you'd say, hey, D9 is the one I want to look at because it has this in it. Could you go check that out for me? Then they'd go among the shelves, they'd pull it out, they'd give you a pair of white cotton gloves that you would use to flip through the pages, and you could study in this small room. You couldn't check it out. You would study in this small room the images that they gave you. And so I went once a week, and one day I went in, and there was this older gentleman sitting at the table. Usually I was in there alone. Every once in a while there was a second person in there. This time there was an older gentleman. And Doug, when I said, hey, Doug, can I check out some of the scenes from Jungle Book? I would like to look for the bare necessities and Baloo doing that dance of the bare necessities because it was so graceful and so amazing, and I wanted to have a look at it. And so he goes, yeah, here you go. Hey, also, he said, Dave, I would like to introduce you to Ollie Johnston. Ollie Johnston, this is Dave. I said, Mr. Johnston, it's so nice to meet you. I didn't know who he was. So then I look at the document to figure out what scene I wanted to check out. And all the bare necessities animated scenes I'm looking, and they're Johnston, Johnston, Johnston. And I'm looking at this book, and I think, oh my God, this is the guy that animated all of those scenes. And I got so excited. I totally fanboyed. I said, Mr. Johnston, you animated all of these scenes. And he was like, well, I guess I did, son. That was a long time ago. It was in 1967 or something like that. And this is in the mid 90s. And so I got a chance to spend a couple of hours with one of what they call 9 old men. Ollie Johnston was one of the guys who invented animation.
Wow.
And so having those legacies, having that opportunity to connect with people like that and to be able to sink into a real conversation about art and life, I asked him, hey, you're at the end of your career. I'm at the beginning. What do I need to know where I sit to be able to do my best work? And he said, really, the key is make it entertaining. If you make a story entertaining, you can tell anybody anything. And so that was a really precious moment that I had when I first started at Disney.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that. And I love the advice that he gave you. Make it entertaining. That's so good.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about your company. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it correctly. Laetro?
Yeah, it's Laetro. It stands for Maestros of Light.
Maestros of Light. That's beautiful. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about the company, the platform, and also how you envision this platform, impacting the lives of artists and the community of creatives in general.
Right. Well, yeah, thank you for asking. So I started Laetro with my co-founder Brett Wilms, who was at Google, and Matt Danzig, who has been in the tech industry for a long time and is an incredible artist himself. And we were looking at solutions for getting creative work done. And my industry, the entertainment industry, has the most extraordinary artists, but most of them work in the entertainment industry, and there are other industries out there that could avail themselves of this kind of incredible talent. And so we thought, could we create something that's in between the systems that are out there right now? Like right now, if you wanted to get creative work done, you would either get a freelancer, which you sort of could fish around for and take your chances, or you would get an agency. And agencies are a little bit more ponderous. They're certainly more expensive. The agency will do it for you. The freelancer um, will, is kind of you do it yourself. And we thought, is there a place in between do it yourself and do it for you? And that is do it with you. And so that's what we built Laetro as a place to do it with you, to be a kind of community of incredible creatives on one side, on say the supply side, and support enterprise clients on the demand side. And then we would help with the admin in between. And so what we created was a system to be able to connect to companies, create all the contracts and agreements, and then production management, invoicing, payment, the sort of all the things that the artists or the companies don't really like to do, but to be able to bring the two of them together. And our mission is to see creatives flourish. So we built this. We've got about 500 or more creatives in our cohort, in our community, and we're in our third year in business right now, and we made more than $2 million for artists last year. And so for me, our mission to see creatives flourish is really just that, to be able to find good work for amazing creatives so that they can flourish in the world.
That's beautiful. That's amazing. And I'm curious, in terms of, well, I was going to ask about the impact that it had from the pandemic, but since it's 3 years old, I'm wondering if it maybe was inspired by the pandemic.
Oh, we started it during the pandemic. Our whole company is remote, and the artists we have come from all over the world. They're amazing artists in India, South America, Europe, all over the U.S., APAC. We've got incredible artists everywhere, and they're comfortable working in their own studios. So we have, we don't really need to have a storefront. So the pandemic really wasn't a hindrance for us. The shift that we're seeing now is into AI. Do you mind if we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to hear. I was just going to ask you as kind of a follow-up, what your thoughts are with the surge of AI coming online.
Right. I mean, we have, like I say, 500 artists. We have had to look at AI. What is our stand for AI? And we continue to be committed to seeing creatives flourish. Early on in our process, we started with illustrators and more folks from the entertainment industry. And since then, we've expanded our aperture to include pretty much all verticals of creativity. Like we have creative directors, art directors, editors, designers, the whole sort of range of designers from, logo makers to SEO and SEM, illustrators, of course. So the whole sort of gambit. And so because of this, influence of AI, we really have had to take a stand. And our stand is always with the creator. And so we have what we've created. So we've created an AI product, and this AI product is designed to be responsible, what we call responsible AI. And that is, we conform to what's called our 4 C's, that we have consent, credit, compensation, and collaboration. And so what that means is that there's consent. Our artists consent to train an exclusive model that's paywalled at Laetro. So there's a style store that has their style in it. They get credit for training a style in their particular idiom. They get compensated. So anytime anybody uses their style to prompt a particular image, they get paid for it. And then collaboration, they can collaborate with companies and people who they may never have had access to in the past. And they can ideate using their own style using this tool. And then lastly, there's a thing that we call polish with a pro. So let's say that the AI that gets prompted, the image that gets prompted, comes back with 7 fingers or it's not quite right, then the client can push a polish with a pro button, and that goes to the artist whose style was prompted, whose style the image is based on, and they can finish it at their day rate. And so the whole thing is designed to take care of the creatives. There's a war going on that, there's AI that's scraping everybody's work, and there's artists who are trying to poison the work. And then this scraping and poisoning goes back and forth, and the artists are in this conflict with the tech industry. And our take is, why don't we just go around the war?
Right.
Why don't we create something, as Buckminster Fuller would say, that's just a better system, and then have people attend to that? And so we believe what we've created is a better system. It's what the industry standards should be, that artists consent, they get credit, they get compensated, and then the whole thing is collaborative instead of conflicting or contradictory. And so we're pretty excited about it. It should be available by the time this podcast drops. And so you can go to Laetro.com and be able to create art in the style of some of the greatest artists of our time right
Oh,
now.
that's amazing. I'll definitely check it out. And I'm so happy that you created this platform. It feels like it's what we need right now, especially in like Los Angeles. I feel like there's so many amazing creatives in all different mediums as well. So
Right,
yeah.
right. And this technology is amazing. Like we now have at our fingertips the totality of digitized information from most of Western civilization. It's pretty extraordinary. The challenges are also pretty extraordinary. Like it's got a lot of bias because of its training. There's, some unethical steps that people have taken to be able to train the models that they have. There's a lawsuit going on with Scarlett Johansson about having, used her voice illegally. There's a lawsuit going on with a bunch of artists that they scraped illegally. But I do think that we could tell. I mean, this is where story comes in. This is where our opportunity to tell a better story exists. And my provocation in this environment of new technology is instead of us telling worst case scenarios, my provocation is what if it went well?
Right. Right.
Now, the real storytellers, the ones who have real chops, that's my challenge to you. Tell the story of what if it went well. Post-apocalyptic stories, the stories of doom and gloom, they're super easy. We're really practiced at those. But the stories of what if it went
Mm.
well, creating that future, man, that's our obligation. Of 100 million species that have ever lived on this planet, 10 million that exist right now, one in 100 million tells stories. That's us. That's a responsibility for shepherdship of the planet, for a kind of responsibility for the power that we wield in story, that to tell the stories and create a future of what if it went well. And so that's what we're doing at Laetro. That's what this new product that we call the Content Generation Suite or CGS is all about. It's all about telling a story that helps creators flourish, that uses AI responsibly, that takes these new technologies and lets them enhance our creativity.
That's beautiful. Wow. Amazing. Dave, this was so lovely. I'm curious in our last couple of questions, what has surprised you the most?
Yeah.
Looking back on your journey, could be about creativity, could it be about, working with Disney, but I'm just kind of curious, what's been your perspective on the on that world?
Yeah. um, I a couple of things. One, I really enjoy having been a part of that period at Disney. When I travel, uh, it was a period that I see had a beautiful effect on our culture. And so I'm really, really proud to have been a part of that time in our history, that creative blossoming that we had there. And I love the people that I worked with there. I see them and they've all stepped into their mastery. The production assistants are now producing feature films. The artists are masters in their craft. It was a blossoming that put so many beautiful seeds into the world, and I'm just really proud to have been a part of that. And then the other thing that I see that I'm really excited about is this evolution in story that I feel is going on right now. And I'll explain it briefly. Joanna Macy, the philosopher, said that there are periods that are called a great turning. A great turning is a period in history where there's a lot of upheaval and things are shifting. And I think we're in one of those right now. I think it takes maybe a generation, but I think we're in a great turning. And in a great turning, you have uh, a great unraveling, so there's some chaos. You have a desire to return to the status quo, but then there's a realization that maybe that's irreversible. You really can't go back to the status quo that happened before the unraveling. And then the third piece, and this is the piece that I'm excited about, is the new story. What is the new story that emerges from this great turning? And the thing that I'm feeling is that the new story is the story of our collective efforts. So there's been this hero's journey. Everybody knows what the hero's journey is. A guy gets a calling that he reluctantly answers. He meets some old guy who gives him a mission. He goes out on the mission to challenge some monster. He vanquishes the monster, gets some elixir that he keeps close to his heart, and returns back to his own garden. But once you return back to your own garden, you realize that you got to make a community garden, that you've seen too much of the world to just come back and grow your own carrots. That we now as heroes have a responsibility to find our kin, to find those other heroes out there, and to take on the things, the projects, the stories that are bigger than any of us. That's where the generosity happens. That's what was going on with me at Disney, was that we were telling a bigger story than any of us. So now this is my invitation to all you heroes out there. Can you find your kin who are wanting to tell a similar story that your heroic skills fit into? And it's what Joanna Macy called the kindred quest. That can you find your kin and go on a kindred quest? It's when you and I met, I felt like that's what Hatch is. Hatch is this place where there's a kindred quest happening. And I listen for those moments where I can participate and contribute to the kindred quest. And so for me, that I think is the most exciting thing. And you can see it in our stories. The Marvel characters who started as singular characters and now are the Avengers or the Justice League or Stranger Things or the Last Airbender. These are stories, or even the Lord of the Rings and the Fellowship. You can see the evolution from hero to kindred quest. And I think that's where we're at right now. And that's what excites me, is finding my kin and taking the kindred quest with them.
Oh my gosh, what an amazing place to leave that. Finding my kin and going on a kindred quest with them. That's I feel like that's the joy of this life, to be in that space. And yeah, I felt similarly with the Hatch group and meeting you and and I love this message about, not just going out there and coming back and planting your own garden, but to realize that we're interdependent and we need each other. And it's not a zero-sum game reality that we're living in. It's a win-win game. And, you speak so eloquently of that with how you show up and with your creativity and with your art. And I was just so moved by who you are in the world as a creator who really lives and speaks from your heart. And, that to me, it has been rare. I thought, although I think it's becoming more popular. I think people are slowly waking up and connecting with that heart frequency. But yeah, Dave, I'm just so grateful to know you. And where can people find you? Can you point folks to where they can find you to learn more about you and your company?
Sure, for sure. Well, you can see some of my work on at Dave Z Art on Instagram, DAVEZART. My company is called Laetro, LAETRO.com. Again, it stands for Maestros of Light. And so you can go to Laetro.com and you can send me an email at dave@laetro.com. And that comes directly to me. So if you have questions or you want to chat more about it, I am wide open. I think the word that you just used that I think is really an exciting word for our time is interdependent. That we are sovereign. We have borders and our borders lean up against each other. And that idea that we are not independent, but are interdependent, I think is I believe it's the age that we're in. I think when we look back on industrial ages and steam and communication and computation, I think that the age that we're in right now is the age of interdependence.
Beautiful. Yes, yes, yes. Could not agree more. Yes,
Yeah.
Dave, this was so great. I'm so grateful that you had the time to come sit with us and chat about your work and creativity. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, I'm honored, Yasmin. I mean, you have the gateways to awakening, and so I'm really honored to be a part of this. So thank you so much for asking me to be here
Oh,
today.
so Dave, thank you again so much. And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about creativity and so much more with Dave Zaboski. And you can tune into Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, creativity, spirituality, and consciousness. Thanks again. What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run a 5-week program at the Inner Knowing School for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals, a number of practical tools and frameworks for creating an intuition practice and for self-mastery. You can find more at theinnerknowingschool.com. I have a master's certification in intuition medicine, and I've condensed 10 plus years of experience and research navigating how to harness your energy and intuition in an easy to access live curated course. Now, as someone who's helped countless creatives, entrepreneurs, and many who are just plain stuck, open doors of possibility they never thought existed, I've seen this strategy transform people's inner states and external reality. And the best part is that you'll skyrocket your output and unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly live to overcome your limiting beliefs and show you how to manage your energy instead of your time. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition based on some of the top tools and frameworks that I've developed. And you'll get access to guided meditations and visualizations not available anywhere else. This method is so effective that even if you don't have that much time, or if you think that you might not be ready, this will work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can check out what past clients had to say about the program. Wishing you all many blessings ahead.